You got the distribution call, you got the placement, you did everything right, and somewhere between the purchase order and the shelf, something went sideways. Your product isn't there, or it's there, but it's wrong, or nobody can tell you either way. Every CPG brand hits this wall. Most of them hit it more than once. I'm Jordan Karcher, founder and CEO of Eileen. Know Thy Shelf is the show for founders and CPG superstars who are done taking anyone's word for what's happening at the shelf. Real stories, real data, one question underneath all of it. Your product is listed as in stock. Is it though? Nathan Carmichael grew up in a bee suit on his dad's apiary in South Louisiana. And today, Carmichael's Honey is the fastest growing honey brand in North America with product in more than 7,000 retail doors. But Nathan built all of that himself. No sales team, no broker, hand delivering jars at 3 a.m. before his day job, learning the hard way what it actually means to have your product on a shelf versus just having a PO. Today, we get into what that journey actually costs. Nathan, you didn't come from a business background in the traditional sense. Your family's been in beekeeping for more than 3 generations. Your dad went commercial when you were 5 years old. When did the idea hit you that there was real business in the honey sitting in those hives?
Jordan, probably that I got out of treatment for drug abuse. I was in it, trapped in addiction. I had obviously grown up on a farm, as you said, and walked off the reservation, didn't want to get into beekeeping. Beekeeping is very labor intensive work. Most people don't realize it's extremely hot in South Louisiana, wearing a suit, the gear. I said, this is not for me. And I never truly saw the retail end of it because daddy was wholesaling honey to General Mills, Kellogg's. They were using it for ingredient, essentially, not bottling it and putting it on shelf. But when I got out of treatment, you can imagine it was hard to find a job. It was difficult. I had, as you said, no formal college training, no resume, if you will. I had sold drugs and unfortunately, and spent time on the streets. And so that was the extent of my experience. What happened is I began to look for sales opportunities because I knew I could sell. I had sold drugs. And so I said, hey, let me see if that translates in the business world. And through that, had found a job selling oil field equipment. It was very low paying. There was not much promise. The ceiling was very low. And I was just an overachiever. I had learned through overcoming addiction, through boxing growing up, a Golden Glove state champion here in Louisiana. I knew what it took to achieve, and I wanted more. And so what I did is I began to notice in retail shelves honey for $5 or $6 for a 1-pound SKU. And I was getting with dad, what are you getting for your honey bulk wholesale? And he would, $1.80, $1.60. And I thought, man, there's a big gap there. And I think I can, probably there's something in there for me. And that's truly when I recognized the opportunity.
Amazing. And so you launched Carmichael's in 2013. So obviously overcame a lot of adversity, and really amazing that you've overcome so much to create such an amazing company. But discipline from boxing, I assume, obviously there is business and street savvy in your career before the honey business, but you launched in 2013 with 50 hives in the dress label, essentially going to farmers markets and just trying to hand sell what you had been making. What was that first kind of learning experience going from honey as a product or an ingredient being sold wholesale to now you're hand selling to customers? And what was that real selling point that you had to differentiate?
Yeah. One of the things that we had is we were local. We were very local. I was keeping the bees myself, and I had, I owned the whole pipeline. I owned the bees. I was bottling the honey, and I was the one selling it to the end consumer directly at farmers markets. And that was kind of like the edge that I had. If you really want local, authentic, raw honey, here it is. We're pulling it out of hive and bottling it. Another edge that I had was my story. Everybody's got a story. No matter how big or small you think that your history is, there's something in there that interests people. And I used my testimony of overcoming addiction and my history in boxing. And I would just, candidly have real conversations with real people as they would walk by my booth and sell them the product and begin to see the viability of D2C. Like, this is a good channel for me. I'm actually connecting. And what was bigger than the sales for me, initially, this did not start out in 13, I was not like, let me build this massive honey empire. I really was like, let me supplement my oil field income because it's not enough to build a family and a life that me and my wife had dreamed up together. And so that's why it started. And, over the course of time, obviously begin to see like the real value for me, Jordan, was the people. I think you got to love people. I loved meeting the people. I could see hope in there. There would be mothers whose son or daughter was trapped in addiction. And it wasn't even the honey that drew them to the table at the farmer's market. It's like, oh my gosh, you overcame.
Yeah.
And I began to unpack that story. They may buy a jar of honey in the test, but I knew that I was sending people home with more than honey in a jar. I was sending them home with hope in their heart. And for me, that's what drove the mission. I was like, man, I have to figure out how to grow this so I can do more of this because I love what I'm doing here on a bare Saturday at a farmer's market, right?
Yeah, so the honey is really just the medium for getting your message across to all these amazing. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, the honey's a platform and the stories that I think the gold. And that's one thing that we do with the honey since early days. I mean, I remember collecting, not much money, 300 to 5 on a slower day, but still, and we would take some of that money and give it back into the same treatment center that I had graduated from because I thought, then I have to get, and I think in entrepreneurship, for me anyway, I can only speak from my own experience, right? And I think that one of the key factors of success for me was always wanting to give back and having not only it keeps you grateful, you have a spirit of gratitude. It also, I was training the brain. Like if you train yourself how to be generous early when there's not much there, don't think that you're going to wait until you sell for $30 million and then you're going to start giving 10%. That's a $3 million check. Start
yeah,
when it's $3,
yeah.
when it's $5. Train the brain. It was too is it separates you from money where it, like I said, it becomes about people and purpose. And that it's hard to beat people and purpose. Anybody can money's really the only reason it's very valuable is because we ascribe value to it. But everybody intrinsically knows that people and purpose are where the real value is. So if you can let that be your foundation when you're building, it's very hard for others to come in and compete with you later.
For sure, and I think a part of it that's really interesting, and my previous company was social impact oriented from the beginning as well. So I believe exactly what you're saying, and it resonates with me. But part of it too is it's so hard to build a business, and I'm sure as great as you have made Carmichael's honey in 13 years, you've probably overcome a lot, and that mission I think is what really helps persist through the process. You don't give up. You don't look at it and go, "Hey, it's too hard," or "The money's not there." You have something a little bigger to help drive you forward.
That's so good. Yeah, and you're exactly right. Sometimes you don't even realize it when you're doing it, but there are years when let me just say this, there were years when there was zero profit, when we were upside down financially. And in those years, if you're doing it for money, I always say this, how you view it is how you do it. And if if that's what you're doing it for is money, and you're at a deficit, what's the purpose? What's the reason? It's easier to give up. But if you're doing it for people, like using our resources, even though they were small early, I was driving men to this program in Missouri. I just did this 2 weeks ago. I continue to do this. It keeps me humble. Could I fly there? Yeah. Could I put them on a plane and fly them there? Of course. But there's something about sacrificing your time on the altar. Time's the most valuable commodity we have. And when you realize that and you sacrifice that on the altar of helping somebody, it, like you said, it adds this intrinsic, indelible value to what you're doing. So it's not just about money. I believe that, and this is just me, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and that was part of my salvation through and deliverance from drugs is my faith. And so I believe that, first you have time. It's the most valuable thing. And if you can learn how to steward your time and be generous with that, then God will give you money. But he's not going to give you something like money, like it's not even worth anything if you can't even steward the real value here on earth, which is me and you and the time that we have, right?
Yeah, and I think your story must resonate with so many people, and the fact now that obviously Carmichael's went from farmers markets to local independent stores to now national, you're able to take that mission all across the country, and so kind of I'd love to talk a bit about what was that like, that journey from, "Hey, this is a farmers market supplemental income process," to, "We're a big business," and that's a very far end of the spectrum, it seems. How have you navigated that growth?
Yeah, very slowly. One common mistake I think that people make is they assume that there's going to be these quantum leaps, and maybe for some there are, but for me, we had no investors. So financially, there were no quantum leaps, right? We couldn't go buy the equipment we needed, we had to save our money to do that. And it was a very slow, really grueling process. There was, thousands of micro failures, but even in the failures, there were lessons. Early on, we didn't even have UPC barcodes on the product. We just, the kind of the light bulb transition was I'm at a farmer's market selling my products and I had this revelation, like there's people, I'm sitting at home at 9 o'clock one night. I'm thinking there's people in Walmart and all across America buying honey on the shelf, but I've got to wait 6 days until Saturday to go sell DSC. And I thought, maybe I need, and your brain just kind of figures stuff out, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I need to figure that out. So all I had was a computer address label with a UPC and then my phone number. And we just started locally delivering to independent retailers, or thank God for independent retailers. Look, trust me, I love the big chains. We do heavy business there, but the roots of what we built, Jordan, was built with independent retailers. We would drive around and the manager would be there and just well, we'll try out a case. They pay you cash out the register. And I had hundreds of accounts like that before I ever had the chain. I had hundreds of independent retailers and I was delivering the product. I was also learning about branding. One heavy lesson we learned. I remember the first chain that I got, it was a smaller chain here in Louisiana, Rouse's. It's about 50 stores. Now it's about 80. They've grown a lot, and we've grown with them. We even handle their private label for them. It was the first chain that I got, and nobody was buying the honey because nobody knew the brand. And I just, the time it fails for me to share the full of it, but there was a good manager. One of the blessings about hand delivering your products is you get to meet these managers and you get to tell them your story. Remember, I was telling, I'm the whole time I'm telling them, hey, this is where I'm at, what I'm doing. And so I'm building relational equity with these people. So here I am, I've delivered all these Rouses. There's nobody buying the product. So I go to a manager that I had trusted and I don't know what's going on. And he said, what kind of cereal do you like? Cheerios. That was my gas pack. That's what I like. He said, okay, when you go get your cereal, what are you looking for on the cereals? I said, I'm going for the Cheerios. I know where they're at. He said, Nathan, that honey's the same way. People know what they're after and you're not going to see if there was a new cereal invented. You're looking for what you know. So he taught me about displays. He said, perhaps you can build displays and you could put them in our stores and we could put them next to the honey with your product on display to give you more shelf, would give more of a brand block and people would see that better. And then they would actually have a choice. And I thought that's a good idea. So real quick, just because this is so great how it materializes displays quoted. This is early in business. It was like $25,000 displays for all. I couldn't afford it. There was no way. But I was going back and there was a local program, Adult and Teen Challenge, the same franchise program that I graduated from. There was a local one that I had been going once a month and giving a testimony to. They had a wood shop. So I said, can you please give me a quote for displays? I thought maybe I'll just see if they can build them for half the price. He said, yeah, next time you come speak next month, we'll have a quote for you. And I sent him the spec and everything. Hey, the next time I went and spoke, they had over displays already built on a trailer covered. And they said, this is for you because you sacrificed your time with no expectation of a return. And that's how things work. So when you make it about people, then God makes it about you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you always got to give before you get. I
A
think
million
that's
percent. And people don't get that because how do you give off what you need? Like you need help, but how do you help? And that's just the way it works. It's the law of giving. You have to give off what you need.
absolutely it. And so honey's an interesting product. Just and I'd love to kind of hear the consumer behavior. Knowing honey is in most people's pantries. Some people use it heavily. Some people use it infrequently. What did you kind of learn about the velocity of the product with these independents, and how is that carried over to the national chains?
Yeah. So the velocity independence is really a lot slower. A lot of like people are in the independent markets I find are looking for those, store brand honeys. And, now we did win local and that honey's very nuanced because there's so many different customers. Let me explain and this was a big transition for me in business, right? Like there's the local market, which we won at, we got people buying local honey. And then it was like, okay, they're not going to buy Louisiana honey in New York though. It's like that's a different consumer. That the consumer buying local honey in New York is looking for low. So what can you sell them in the honey world in New York that they can buy? I had wanted to get outside of my region, and that's where we hit all these walls. So what I initially did is I thought, well, Texas is next door. I know a ton of Texas beekeepers. I'll launch a Texas brand. So I
Okay,
did another local honey in Texas.
got it.
That
So
got us outside of Louisiana. It kind of got us branded down here in the South where we actually begun to generate a little bit of Nielsen data. And that was exciting. It was nothing crazy nothing you'd want to brag about, but we were on the scale now and we could see our brand showing up in the data. And so then it was like, okay, what do we do next? Well, then it was organic was the next thing. I realized there's certified organic honey all over America. And that's not a local shopper. That's an organic shopper. So that's a big market that we're missing. Right.
So you were revolving the product based on your distribution at that point. You're looking for ways to connect with the customer. Local works in Louisiana, obviously. Your story, I'm sure, was well known. You're probably getting press. But when you expand outside, you start shifting your product a bit to be a more widely appealing category fit.
Yeah, what do you do? And so we didn't exterminate our local branding. We still have that, and it's some of our strongest performing items. But what we did is we began to answer the call to that organic market. And, you really learn from other people. A lot of people, if you really just look around, and it's not copycatting, it's like there's people when you're first starting out, there's people it's like a quick Google search or let me go out and look and see what's in retail. And that's what that was about. We're seeing organic honey everywhere. There's only like one or two brands early in the game. This is like 5 years ago. Organic's really just taken off. And we're realizing like this is white space, and so that's really what put us next level was organic honey. And the beauty of it is it was sourced from Brazil and my wife is from Brazil. So it gave me like this edge that I had, was able to go in and say, because Marcella would fly down to the country, she'd go to the exporter, meet with them, speak the language, inspect it, whatever that looks like in her world. She was just making sure things were clean and properly managed, like we would manage our own plant. And the communication was there. Other competitors that in this organic space didn't have that. They were just calling an importer in New York or Pennsylvania and hitting a button. And we're like, no, we're speaking the language and we're visiting the people and we're visiting where the hot. And so my retail partners really bought into that because it's worth buying into when you're directly sourcing product from where it's coming from. And it's not going through multiple channels before it gets to the
Absolutely.
bottle.
And so with the expansion in retail as well as just a total volume of production that you have to keep up with, how did you start? And you're still, I believe, you're still running sales, right? I believe you are
Yeah,
still.
I actually, exciting. I hired my first sales manager. He'll come on next month. And so national sales director, he's an executive. I mean, this guy's got 20 years of experience. So we're about to put rocket fuel in the tank. If you're my competitor and you're out there listening to me, we're coming. And if you're my customer and you're out there listening to me, we're about to bring you some good product if it's not in your local store yet that you shop in.
And so I mean, the 7,000 stores by yourself is a tall task. How have you been able to manage that? What's your approach of managing such a wide footprint?
So it initially, really like a lot of just elementary, rudimentary, like tactics, right? I could tell you like how we got into Walmart was Google. I Googled Walmart headquarters phone number, 10
Huh.
phone numbers come up. I start calling them all. I finally hit a switchboard. Walmart corporate, how may I help you? And I told her I need to speak to the honey buyer. And she's like, which one? Like continental US, Canada. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, I just hung up. And so then I go to LinkedIn and I'm like, I need to give her names. So I'm like, Walmart buyers, LinkedIn. And I just write down like 30 names and I start getting to the past the switchboard, like one step at a time. And then I got the buyer of women's apparel. I'm just
Okay.
telling you, like, generally, like, this was like guerrilla tactics in sales. And he's like, it's a guy. He's like, this is a buyer of women's apparel. And then I just kind of pleaded with him, hey, do you have a company roster? I don't know. I keep getting the wrong name. And he's like, yeah, let me give you the guy's name. And he gives me the name. I'm like, can you give me his email address? He gives me I'd almost ask for that brother's home address. I mean, I'd be that you got to be willing to do what it takes.
We'll drop this off in his house. Where he's in.
Yeah, we finally get through to the guy and he sets up a meeting with me and my wife. We're to fly up there. We don't even have the resources to get a plane ticket. I remember this is early. I'm like, oh, only time I had got on a plane was when my parents flew me home from treatment after coming out of addiction. So I'm like, the second time on a plane. And anyway, we go up there and meet with him. Marcella's like 6 months pregnant. I'm like, maybe we get a sympathy sale. You got to come. We sold into 90 Walmarts. For context, today we have 1,400 points of distribution with Walmart. But that was like how it happened early. And like, how did we keep up with it? I'm going to tell you, one of the key things was good partners. As things grew, we did bring on broker partners, and broker partners can help you or hurt you. We've had good ones and bad ones, but finding the right ones that are truly going to help you manage the business. And then you have to do your part too. They're going to send you sales reports and you have to develop your sales acumen and understand how to read those reports and what they're saying about your product and about customer trends. Because if you don't understand that, you can't just expect them to do everything. They're going to get you the reports. They're going to help you manage the promotional activity, but you still have to understand your costs or you can over promote and you can you lose your behind, there's just so many different factors. And look, honestly, like a lot of that stuff was learned through mistakes, but you survived the mistakes. There's I think people give up because they get tired of the mistakes, but you'll fail your way to success. Right. And like I always say this, experience is the best teacher, but it's also the most expensive one. And when you learn a lesson through experience, it sticks with you. And so a lot of this we learned through mistakes, experience, and correcting. That's why I love tennis. I play a little tennis, and like the game is won on mistakes, really. And so as long as you understand the mistake and you make the adjustment to fix it, then the next time you'll have success there, right? And so it's the same thing in retail. We just continue to adjust. And I'm so glad it was smaller and the growth was slow because that's the problem, I think, too, with some people that take on a ton of investment money but don't have the right experiences yet. The mistakes are a quarter of $1,000,000. They're not 25 grand. You can recover from $25,000. 250 is a little more difficult. And so we learned and we got burned, and we partners have helped up until now keep the organization, you know.
Yeah. And so a big focus for us is always about that in-store execution element. And Nielsen Circana have you as the fastest growing honey brand in North America right now. So you guys are cranking. Is the expectation ever different when you walk into a store versus what you're seeing in the data? So we know the data can look great, sometimes it looks awful. Do you ever have those experiences walking through stores where you like, like a founder fixing up shelves, finding missing product, that you have kind of that hand holding element of growth in retail, even at this scale?
I do. It's just in me, and I don't know that it even helps. At the scale is so massive. Like almost everything has to be ran from a data perspective, and data's it's always behind by months. So it's like you're as a founder and an owner, it's so hard because and really that comes out of like how we started. That's what I did. I hand delivered product and fixed it on the shelf. So I walk in there and I see these things and I think I have to remind myself, there are weekly sales reports that a lot of these retailers give us. So that kind of helps us understand, is what we're seeing on the shelf true to what we're experiencing, in our financials. It's paramount to watch all that stuff. I used to not look at it, when it was small, like, brother, we were just trying to I was just pushing that top line up and trying to get as much revenue as I could and didn't understand near what I did now. But now you're right. It's more, and there's still that element where you walk into a store, you see all the product and you fix it, and then you begin to look at the tags like, oh, I'm on promotion, but why is the yellow tag not out? And I'm emailing the broker and I got to watch myself. I've learned, really just recently, the past couple of years, is like, it's not that I'm a hothead on it, but I'm so passionate about my product. I'd see yellow tags not out. And it's like, this promotion is supposed to be running 3 weeks ago. And I'd email the broker. Well, the broker would come back and you forget that now you're a national brand. He'd come back and he'd say, well, look, I'm in California and you're in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and there's 700 Ralphs in or whatever it is, 500 Ralphs in California. And your yellow store the division with 3 stores in Louisiana and have them fix it in that division. You're like, oh, I shouldn't have hammered it. Like I didn't realize.
You know what? I think you're in the right for that. I have no issue with. I was the same. It's about caring about product and execution, and if you're doing everything you can to control it, my view is scale shouldn't detract quality. So you should still be right. My expectation is if I give you money to run a promotion and I'm paying for scan backs and you're not putting the tag on, I'm giving money away for free. So if it's 100, but we see such a wide. It seems small in some people's minds, but you'll see 20, 30% of stores missing a promotion tag, and the only way that's in store, and you're sitting there being like, well, I didn't get the lift I wanted. I don't find out that the tag's worn out. So those things for me were, I think, paramount to continue to execute. And that's realistically, when you look at the big General Mills of the world, they have people in store every day, man, because those little things, especially at your scale now, I'm guessing you're going to be at 10,000 doors by the end of this year, at least, just based. So like let's say it's 5%, that's 500 stores that are performing properly. And that's enough to swing the revenue a bit. So I do view that in-store element as crucial, that a lot of people do want to sweep under the rug, but the best brands I feel like can find a way to execute at scale the same way you did when it was being managed at independent.
Sure. And, speaking of scale, understanding and recognizing opportunity, I'm a big loyalist. I'm all about loyalty. It's the way Daddy raised us on a farm. Like, your word is your word, boy. I can still hear him. And so it's how I think. And it's not, I had to learn even just of recently, like we changed all of our plastic suppliers, our corrugate. It's like I had been working with the same people for a decade. Oh, they're giving me the best price. I mean, I have deep relational equity here, and we go find somewhere else, give me 50% less cost. So you go back to your supplier and you're like, hey, I kind of feel like, what's going on? Why? And then well, we could do a little better. And you got to leave those people. They're not for you, or if they're just not to the scale that you're at anymore, supplier, whatever it is, you have to make decisions that are tough for the company. Cause we left some of those 10-year relationships. It's like, well, look, we're at scale now and 10 cents a bottle, over 1 million bottles. It's a lot of money. You're talking about 6 figures, and that it's not about me and being greedy. It's about like, I need to hire more staff. I need to continue to increase their pay. There's so much going on in this thing. And those smart moves of scale, like you said, paying attention to those little details, it can hurt you, it can help you. You got to look at it.
So I mean, I've really enjoyed this, and I just want to kind of wrap up with one question I like to ask everybody. So going back in time, I'm a founder. I'm newly launching my brand into grocery and retail. I'm about to build something. What's kind of like the one piece of advice you give to new founders or entrepreneurs entering in the consumer goods world that you either wish you would have gotten or that you like to pass on?
Yeah, stay consistent. Don't quit. And can I give you just a little bit, like a tiny tidbit here on this? Okay. When I first got into honey wasn't on trend like it is right now. People were still eating sugars and syrups and stuff. So we weren't moving like we're moving now. But I watched other guys around me. I remember I had a friend doing a snow cone on the go, and I thought he had a 60% profit margin. I had a 12% profit margin. I remember thinking, I've only been in this 2 or 3 years. I can switch gears and I can get some, and I would see other people do it. They'd see him and they'd go for a different product. And man, I just stuck with it. I said, nah, you stick with your thing, dog. And I just kept going, kept
So
going. And here it is years later. Diligence is doing a little thing for a long period of time to get a big result wherever you're at.
I like it. That's great advice. Nate, I appreciate you joining us and being straight with the story and telling us about your experience and your amazing background. I appreciate the conversation. As we always like to remind everybody, just getting a PO and just getting on the shelf is just the start of the journey. It's about execution. It's about consistency. It's about grit and determination. So if you've got distribution nationally and you want to check it out, or you have distribution locally and you just can't get to the stores, check us out at shopwitheileen.com. We can run a free demo for you, 1 store to 20 stores, and we can get you visibility back in 3 to 5 days. Act like every store is the store next door. So thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.